relaxing of the lockdown measures and the festivities round the corner, the government had no alternative but to allow the domestic airliners to operate earlier this week. However, the concerned health authorities, by allowing passengers to travel without a negative PCR report, have clearly undermined the consequences. With the Kathmandu Valley already a COVID-19 hotspot, the scenario might pave a way to the unsuspecting individuals carrying the virus to every part of the country. Good morning, I am Bipashna Thamang and these are the headlines of the hour. COVID-19 cases exceed 66,000 mark, that tally reaches 430. Testing centres overwhelmed with public as number of cases spike. The ruling party directs the government to settle appointments at constitutional bodies. Party leaders divided over criteria for cabinet reshuffle. Tensions between the US and China come to the fore at the annual UN General Assembly as the US President blames China for the spread of coronavirus. And Sanju Samson shines with the bat for Rajasthan as the Royals stun Dhoni's men at the Indian Premier League. (1,356) new COVID-19 cases were reported yesterday, taking the total number of coronavirus cases in the country to 66,632. One more coronavirus patient succumbed to the virus this morning in Bardia to take the COVID-19 death tally to 430. Meanwhile, 647 coronavirus cases were reported from the federal capital yesterday, including 511 cases from Kathmandu district alone, 73 from Lalitpur and 63 from Bhaktapur. Likewise, Sunsari confirmed 77 new cases, Rupandehi 74, Banke 58, Morang 57, Surkhet 44 and Kavri Palanchok 30. 823 individuals were discharged yesterday after they registered full recovery. With this, the number of individuals with full recovery has reached 48,061 and the recovery rate stands at 72%. According to the Health Ministry, there are 18,142 active cases in the country, out of which 9,193 individuals are in isolation centers, while 8,949 are in home isolation. 37 patients are receiving treatment in ventilators, while 223 are in intensive care units. The federal capital has fast turned into coronavirus hotspot with over 500 cases reported on a daily basis in recent time. This has led to an overwhelming number of people arriving at the capital's Teku-based Sukraraj Tropical and Infectious Disease Hospital to test themselves. We have more in this report.
The Sukraraj Tropical and Infectious Disease Hospital has been collecting more than 500 swab samples on a daily basis since mid-September. The number stood at 300 prior to that. With the easing of prohibitory orders, more public have begun flocking testing centers in recent time. Many of them returned without testing due to overwhelming crowd and a fear of transmission. Meanwhile, some individuals at the Sukraraj Tropical and Infectious Disease Hospital were even seen in possession of food and other amenities, saying that they have to wait in line for hours for the test. As a preventive measure, the government has been urging the public to maintain social distance and use masks while in public. However, many people at the hospital were seen overlooking the minimum safety measures. Analysts say the crowd has been higher at the Sukraraj Tropical and Infectious Disease Hospital, as private hospitals and laboratories have been charging up to 4,500 rupees per test against the government directive. Health experts have urged the hospital to better manage the crowd, as it could very well be another place to contract the virus.
The power conflict within the ruling Nepal Communist Party has diverted towards cabinet reshuffle these days. Top brass leaders have been mulling over the criteria for selection of new ministers. Meanwhile, the party's secretariat meeting held yesterday failed to decide on the criteria. Three alternatives were at the Secretariat Committee meeting held on Sunday, including dismissing ministers who had completed 2 years' term, reshuffling the cabinet based on work execution, or only appointing ministers at the 3 vacant ministries. However, the ruling party leaders could not agree on either of the alternative proposal. The meeting, scheduled for Monday, was suspended as dispute persisted among leaders regarding the criteria of selecting candidates. The meeting resumed yesterday following discussions between the party's chairman duo but failed to address the issue. Sources say Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli wants to give continuity to current portfolio out of fear of losing his confidence from the cabinet. Defence Minister Ishwar Pokhrel and Home Minister Ram Bahadur Thapa have backed Premier Oli on the issue. Meanwhile, majority of the Secretariat Committee meeting, including Executive Chairman Pushpa Kamal Dahal, have insisted on a complete reshuffle. According to sources, leader Bishnu Paudel, Bamdev Gautam and Naran Kaji Shrestha are vying for a place at the cabinet. Meanwhile, the Secretariat Committee has directed the government to move ahead with the appointment process of officials for vacant posts at the constitutional bodies. The meeting has also directed party's General Secretary Bishnu Paudel to submit a work plan for remaining tasks of party's integration within 10 days after consulting with the chairman duo. In a bid to expand exports, the National Tea and Coffee Development Board has brought into effect the Nepal Tea Quality from the Himalayas trademark today onwards, with focus on quality assurance. 12 companies have been allowed to use the logo to export their tea products. We have more in this report.
Nepal's orthodox tea received its own trademark on Tuesday, 157 years since the sales began. Producers had been selling their tea products without trademarks so far, which has raised questions on their quality in the international market. The National Tea and Coffee Development Board implemented the trademark Nepal Tea Quality from the Himalayas with the intention of branding Nepalese tea products. Analysts have opined this will help boost the country's tea export. The National Tea and Coffee Development Board has allowed 12 tea producers to use the trademark, saying that the companies met the criteria of the Nepali Orthodox Tea Certification Trademark Implementation Directive 2017. Applications from 42 other companies are under consideration at the moment. Nepal has been producing tea in 28,000 hectares of land at the moment. According to the National Tea and Coffee Development Board, Nepal produces 6 million kilograms of orthodox tea per year, 5.4 million of which is exported. However, producers say they have not received desired price for their produce, as 80% of the tea is usually exported to neighboring nation, India. Orthodox tea raises an annual revenue of 4 billion rupees in Nepal. Nepal tea is high in demand in US, South Korea, Europe and Japan, among others. However, despite the growing demand, the market share for Nepalese tea has failed to grow as expected. There have also been instances where farmers had to destroy large amount of tea due to lack of market. With the implementation of trademark, experts say Nepal's tea will gain desired market scale.
And time now for the international update. Tensions between the US and China came to the fore at the annual UN General Assembly in New York, with US President Donald Trump blaming China for the spread of coronavirus. The US President called for China to be held accountable for the pandemic. Meanwhile, Chinese President Xi Jinping, in his speech, said China had no intention to enter a Cold War with any country. Ties between the two world powers are strained on a number of fronts. This year's summit at New York is largely being held virtually, with world leaders providing pre-recorded speeches. The new format meant some of the geopolitical theater normally on offer at the key UN meeting was absent. Each country was represented by a single delegate, and there was little opportunity for one nation to rebut another. But as often in the case for speeches to the Assembly, President Trump used his address to tout his achievements. President Trump, whose own record on coronavirus is under close scrutiny as the U.S. heads towards elections, has frequently accused Beijing of covering up the virus, saying they could have stopped the disease from spreading. China has called the attacks on an unfounded distraction. Tensions are high between the U.S. and China on a number of other issues, including trade, technology, Hong Kong, and China's treatment of Muslim minorities in Xinjiang province. And in our Public Voice segment, we had asked members of the Musahar community in Dudholi municipality in Sindhuli how have they felt about the houses provided by the government. Let's take a look at what they had to say.
Public Voice.
घर भयो धेरै खुसी भयो अब सरकारले अलिकति त्यो पिउने पानीको व्यवस्था गरिदिए एकदम खुसी लाग्थ्यो
सर्वको डर हुन्थ्यो अब त डर पनि हुँदैन राम्रो भइराछ
रोजी भिजी आको अनि घरमा बसेको हैन अनि त अब राम्रो भयो बुढोकालमा राम्रो भएको छ
फुत्केरी हुँदाखेरि यस्तो चिसो हुन्थ्यो चिसोले कति बच्चा मर्यो कति गयो उपचार नभएर
घर त बनाइदियो सरकारले अब यो जग्गाहरुको लालपुर जादिए त राम्रो हुन्थ्यो
And time now for our segment Public Pulse, where you text us with your opinion.
Public Pulse.
And here's the question: what should be done to lessen the crowds at hospitals gathered for COVID-19 test? Your options: option A, online registration system; option B, door-to-door collection of swab samples; and option C, expand testing parameters. Centers. The voting is on. Type any WS, select your option A, B or C and send it to 34001 to share your opinion with us. And time now for the sports update. Rajasthan Royals have kicked off their Indian Premier League campaign with a resounding 16-1 victory over Chennai Super Kings. In the match played at Sharjah Stadium, Rajasthan sent into bat first, amassed 216 runs for the loss of 7 wickets. Sanju Samson and Steve Smith put on 121 runs partnership for the second wicket to put the Royals in a commanding position. Samson top scored with 74 runs while Smith made 69 runs. Some lusty hitting at the end by Geoffrey Archer took the innings past a 200 mark. Sam Curran was the pick of the Chennai bowlers with 3 wickets. In reply, Chennai were restricted to 200 runs for the loss of 6 wickets. Faf du Plessis top scored with 72 runs for Chennai, but there were no other notable contribution with the bat to chase down the big score. Kolkata Knight Riders will kick-start their campaign playing against Mumbai Indians in today's match. West Ham United manager David Moyes and 2 of the club's players have tested positive for coronavirus. The club were informed of the positive test while preparing for Tuesday's home Carabao Cup tie against Hull City, which the Hammers won 5-1. Moyes' 57 defender Issa Diop, 23 and 24-year-old midfielder Josh Cullen will now be required to self-isolate. West Ham cruised into the 4th round of the Carabao Cup with an emphatic win over League One side Hull City. Sebastian Haller and Andrzej Yarmolenko both netted twice for the hosts after Robert Snodgrass had opened the scoring. Hammers boss David Moyes, defender Issa Diop and midfielder Josh Cullen all missed the game after testing positive for coronavirus. Malik Wilkes scored a second-half consolation goal for the visitors. West Ham will now travel to Fleetwood or Everton in the 4th round, where ties are due to take place in the week commencing 28th of September. The coronavirus pandemic has affected the sporting calendar of All Nepal Football Association. There are high chances new tournaments might not be held due to the crisis, while there are tournaments prior to the pandemic that have yet to be concluded. The Martyrs Memorial A-Division League has been one of the tournaments affected by the ongoing health crisis, as the second and third division football leagues have yet to conclude. The tournaments can be organized by following international practice of testing each players and officials twice a week and keeping all involved in strict quarantine. However, clubs have said the 1 million rupees fund provided by the ANFA is not adequate, especially as they lack sponsors. And it's time now for our Tuesday special segment, COVID-19. World Health Organization's Regional Director Hans Klug stated that the number of new COVID-19 cases had doubled in more than half of European member states in the past 2 weeks. Klug was speaking in Copenhagen on Thursday as the number of confirmed infections worldwide crossed the 30 million mark on that day. Klug also said the surging coronavirus figures across Europe should serve as a wake-up call. More than 963,000 people have died since the coronavirus emerged in China late last year. Klug said 300,000 new infections were reported across Europe in the previous week alone, and weekly cases had exceeded those reported during the first week in March. According to the World Health Organization, there have been more than 5 million confirmed cases and more than 228,000 fatalities across Europe since the pandemic began. According to the latest data from Johns Hopkins University, the number of new COVID-19 cases in 31 US states increased by at least 10% this past week compared to the previous week. According to the COVID tracking project, the test positivity rate and the percentage of new test results that are positive is rising in 25 states. The updated guidance from the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says the coronavirus can be commonly spread through viral particles in the air. New Zealand is in its deepest recession in decades, following strict measures in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, which were widely praised. The country's GDP shrank by 12.2% between April and June as the lockdown and border closures hit. It is New Zealand's first recession since the global financial crisis and its worst since 1987, when the current system of measurement began. But the government hopes its pandemic response will lead to a quick recovery. The nation of nearly 5 million was briefly declared virus-free, although it still has a handful of cases and a few deaths. This is Bipashna Tamang for a special package on COVID-19 and Kantipur News Desk. And before wrapping up, here's a look at the top stories one more time. COVID-19 cases exceed 66,000 mark. That tally reaches 430. Testing centers overwhelmed with public as number of cases spike. The ruling party directs the government to settle appointments at constitutional bodies. Party leaders divided over criteria for cabinet reshuffle. Tensions between the US and China come to the fore at the annual UN General Assembly as the US President blames China for the spread of coronavirus. And Sanju Samson shines with the bat for Rajasthan as the Royals stun Dhoni's men at the Indian Premier League. And that's all for the moment. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.